They say money talks, but in my experience, real capital doesn't talk. It whispers. It nods. Occasionally, if you've really screwed up, it clears its throat. I've spent 20 years translating those throat clears for boards of directors who think a quarterly projection is a holy scripture. My name is Joanne. I'm a fund trust liaison and investor governance advisor in New York City. That's a lot of syllables to say. I make sure the people who own the money trust the people spending the money. I don't shout. I don't throw chairs. I operate in the quiet zones, the sidebars of board meetings, the review clauses of governance docs, the handshake lines at charity galas. For a decade, I was the invisible glue holding a very expensive portfolio together. Then came the director. Let's call him Chad, because even if his birth certificate says something distinguished like Preston, his soul is wearing a backward baseball cap and holding a red Solo cup. Chad was a hire from the CEO's alma mater, brought in to disrupt legacy thinking. In corporate speak, legacy thinking usually means legal compliance or basic arithmetic. He walked in on day one with teeth whitened to a blinding ceramic glare and a suit that cost more than my first car, radiating the specific confidence of a man who has never been told no by anyone other than a bartender at last call. I knew the dynamic had shifted on a Tuesday morning. I walked into the oversized, glass-walled conference room on the 44th floor, the one with the view of the Hudson that's supposed to intimidate vendors, and found the strategy meeting was already 20 minutes in. There was no chair for me. The table was full. Chad was at the head, leaning back. Gesturing with a Mont Blanc pen, he definitely didn't know how to refill. The CEO was nodding along to a slide deck full of buzzwords like synergy velocity and aggressive optimization. "Oh, Joanne," Chad said, stopping mid-sentence. He didn't stand up. He didn't apologize. He smiled the way you smile at a waitress who brought you tap water instead of sparkling. "We actually pivoted the agenda to blue sky strategy this morning. Didn't think we needed the compliance police for the ideation phase. You can grab a coffee if you want, though." The room went dead silent. The CFO, a man I've known for 12 years, looked down at his notepad. The general counsel suddenly found a fascinating scratch on the mahogany table. "Governance isn't policing, Chad," I said, my voice level, steady. I didn't blink. "It's structural engineering. You don't build the penthouse before you check the foundation." Right, right. Chad chuckled, waving a hand as if swatting a fly. "But we're flying the plane while we build it, Joanne. New era. We need speed, not guardrails. We'll loop you in when we need someone to check the spelling on the press release." A few of the junior VPs snickered. It was that nervous, sycophantic laughter you hear when the alpha dog marks his territory. I didn't argue. I didn't demand a seat. I simply nodded, turned on my heel, and walked out. By the way, before I get into how I systematically dismantled this man's career using nothing but PDF attachments in silence, if you enjoy stories about corporate hubris meeting the concrete wall of reality, do us a small favor and hit subscribe or drop a like. It helps the algorithm find the other frustrated office workers who need a win today. Okay, back to the Shark Tank. Walking back to my office, I felt that familiar burn in the chest, not heartburn, but the cold fire of professional insult. It wasn't just the rudeness, it was the stupidity. Chad didn't understand what I did. He saw me as a barrier, a speed bump, dead weight with nice shoes. He didn't realize that I wasn't there to protect the company from the investors. I was there because the investors wanted me there to watch the company. I sat at my desk, looking out at the gray skyline. My phone blinked. It was a text from the CEO. "Don't take it personal. He's just shaking things up. We need his energy for the Series E round." Energy, that's what they called it. I called it liability. Later that afternoon, I noticed the first subtle cut. I went to access the shared drive for the upcoming acquisition due diligence, a project I had been leading for 6 months. Access denied. Contact administrator. I called IT. "Hey, Kevin," I said, keeping it breezy. "Glitch on the drive?" Hey, Joanne," Kevin stammered. Kevin was 24 and terrified of everyone. Actually, the request came from the director's office. They're moving all M&A files to a secure strategic silo. Access is limited to the core growth team. "I see," I said, "and I'm not on the core growth team?" I don't see your name on the list, Joanne. "Sorry." "It's fine, Kevin, don't worry about it." I hung up. I stared at the black screen of my locked files. Most people would have stormed into the CEO's office. Most people would have sent a scathing email copying HR. I did neither. Instead, I opened a different drawer in my desk, the one that locked with a physical key. I pulled out a fresh legal pad. Chad thought he was icing me out of the game. He thought that by removing my access, he was removing my power. What he failed to grasp, what men like him always fail to grasp, is that power isn't about having the login password. Power is about knowing who actually owns the server. I picked up my phone, but I didn't call anyone internal. I opened my calendar and looked at the date of the next quarterly investor call. 6 weeks away. 6 weeks is a long time in corporate America. Enough time to launch a product. Enough time to ruin a merger. And if you're patient and meticulous, exactly enough time to let a man hang himself with his own synergy. I opened a blank document on my personal laptop. Never the company machine for this part, and typed a single header, governance log, unsanctioned blocks. I wasn't the compliance police anymore. I was the crime scene photographer, and the body count was about to start rising. If part 1 was the cold shoulder, part 2 was the shiv to the kidneys. It started with the budget. In my line of work, your budget isn't just money, it's your capacity to verify reality. I use third-party auditors, external legal counsel for second opinions, and specialized forensic accountants. These aren't cheap, but they are the insurance policy that keeps the board from going to prison. 2 weeks after the no-chair incident, I received an automated notification from the finance system. Subject, Q3 Budget Adjustment Department 404, Governance Status, Revised New Allocation, minus 60%. I stared at the number. A 60% cut wasn't a trim, it was an amputation. They had left me enough to buy paperclips and maybe a subscription to the Wall Street Journal, but they had stripped the funds for the external audit on the upcoming acquisition. I walked down to the finance floor. The controller, a woman named Sarah who usually had pictures of her golden retrievers facing the door, looked like she wanted to crawl under her desk when she saw me coming. Sarah, I said softly, leaning against her doorframe. 60%, she took off her glasses and rubbed the bridge of her nose. I fought it, Joanne, I really did. Chad came in with the Lean Operations Initiative. He said, well, do you want the direct quote? I always want the direct quote, he said. Why are we paying outsiders to tell us we're doing a good job? If we trust our team, we don't need babysitters. He reallocated your audit budget to the marketing spend for the rebranding launch. I felt a cold laugh bubbling up in my throat. He was taking the money used to ensure the numbers were real and using it to buy billboards saying the numbers were great. It was Ponzi scheme logic applied to a billion-dollar equity fund. Thanks, Sarah, I said. I know it wasn't you. He's dangerous, Joanne, she whispered, looking at the hallway. He's approving expenses that, let's just say the documentation is thin. Noted. The humiliation didn't stop at the spreadsheet. 3 days later, we had a pitch with the Trident Group, potential strategic partners from London. I had spent 4 years cultivating a relationship with their risk officer, stiff upper lip type named Alistair who trusted me because I once talked him out of a bad deal that would have cost him his bonus. I was prepping my notes for the meeting when the calendar invite simply disappeared. Poof, gone. I grabbed my coat and walked past the main boardroom. The glass was frosted now, a new addition, probably so the legacy employees couldn't see the future happening without them. But the door was cracked open. I heard Chad's voice, booming and jovial. Don't worry about the oversight committee. We've streamlined the process. Less red tape, more green lights. The old guard was a bit too obsessed with the what-ifs. We're focused on the what-nows. I saw Alistair in the reflection of the monitor. He looked uncomfortable. He was looking around the room, presumably for me. Later that afternoon, a junior analyst named Marcus came to my office. Marcus was a sweet kid, fresh out of Wharton, still idealistic enough to think that competence mattered. He closed my door and looked like he was about to confess to a murder. Joanne, he said, his voice shaking. I shouldn't be telling you this. Sit down, Marcus, breathe. They had a pre-meeting strategy session without you. Chad told the team that you're rigid. He said you kill momentum. He explicitly told us not to CC you on the draft term sheets for the acquisition. Did he put that in writing? I asked. No. He said it in the huddle. But then Marcus reached into his pocket and pulled out a crumpled piece of paper. He made notes on the whiteboard. I took a picture before they erased it. Then I printed it because I didn't want it on my phone. He slid the paper across my desk. It was a photo of a whiteboard with a flow chart. Under the box labeled Governance Review, Chad had drawn a big red X and written, bypass speed too close. You didn't get this from me, Marcus said. Standing up, get what from you? I smiled. We were just discussing your performance review, Marcus. You're doing excellent work. He left. I looked at the photo, bypass. The anger I felt earlier had crystallized into something harder, something useful. This wasn't just office politics anymore. This was negligence, fiduciary breach. The kind of thing that dissolves trust funds and triggers SEC investigations. I unlocked my bottom drawer again. I took out a portable encrypted hard drive, my own, not company property. I began the export. I didn't just save emails, I saved metadata. I saved the calendar logs showing the canceled invites. I saved the budget revision history. I scanned the crumpled photo Marcus gave me, but then I went deeper. I went into the archives. See, Chad didn't know history. He didn't know that 5 years ago, when the fund was restructuring, he had to file specific governance covenants with our major institutional investors, the pension funds, the endowments, the family offices. These weren't just company policy documents, they were binding legal contracts attached to the capital. I pulled up the filings from 2019. I scrolled to section 4.2, Trustee Liaison Protocols. There it was, in black and white. To ensure continuity of oversight, the fund designates Joanne last name as the primary governance liaison. Any removal, replacement, or significant alteration of the liaison's duties must be preceded by a formal 30-day notice to the investor committee and ratified by a majority vote of the limited partners. They hadn't just insulted me. They hadn't just cut my budget. By sidelining me without notifying the investors, they were actively breaching the contract that allowed them to access the money in the first place. Chad thought he was firing a middle manager. He didn't realize he was unplugging the server while the data was still transferring. I printed the page. I didn't highlight it. I didn't circle it. I just placed it in a manila folder labeled the insurance policy. I looked at the clock. 5:30 p.m. Time to go home. I had a dinner reservation to make, and I suddenly had quite an appetite. If you want to kill someone in corporate America, you don't use a knife. You use a reorganization strategy. 3 weeks into the Chad regime, the invitation went out for an all-hands town hall, future forward. The graphic design looked like something from a rave flyer, neon gradients and rocket ship emojis. We gathered in the atrium. Chad stood on a makeshift stage, wearing a headset microphone like he was teaching a spin class. He paced back and forth, talking about trimming the fat and unleashing potential. Then a slide popped up behind him. It was an org chart, a new one. At the top were the growth vectors: sales, marketing, product, all leading directly to him. Off to the side, in a gray, dotted line box that looked like a graveyard, was a section labeled Legacy Support Services. And there was my name. Not Director of Investor Governance, just support. We need to honor where we came from, Chad said, his voice dripping with faux sincerity. But we can't let the past weigh us down. Our legacy team will be transitioning to an advisory capacity, helping us archive the old ways as we build the new. He pointed at the screen. He pointed at my name. 200 people turned to look at me. I was standing near the back, holding a cup of lukewarm coffee. I didn't scowl, didn't cross my arms. I took a sip of coffee, looked Chad directly in the eye, and offered a small, polite smile. The kind of smile a teacher gives a toddler who has just proudly crapped his pants. The message was clear: I am irrelevant, I am history, I am being put out to pasture. The next morning, the email from HR arrived. Subject: voluntary transition opportunity from Human Resources Confidential. I opened it. It was a generous offer. 6 months of severance, continued healthcare for a year, and a non-disparagement agreement so watertight it probably forbade me from frowning at the company logo. The kicker was the deadline. Please sign and return by Friday close of business to secure this premier package. They were trying to buy me out before the quarterly call. They wanted me gone, physically and contractually, before the investors could ask, "Hey, where's Joanne?" I printed the offer. I didn't sign it. I put it in the folder with the crumpled whiteboard photo and the 2019 governance filing. Then I did something that would have confused them deeply if they were watching. I started doing exactly what they asked. I stopped coming to the strategy meetings I wasn't invited to. I stopped sending corrections on their compliance memos. I stopped asking questions about the acquisition due diligence. I became a ghost in my own office. When people passed my glass walls, they saw me typing furiously. They assumed I was updating my resume or emailing headhunters. They looked at me with pity. Poor Joanne, she just couldn't adapt to the new speed. What they didn't see was what I was actually typing. I was compiling a master index. Document 001, date/time stamp of denied server access. Document 002, audio transcript of town hall, recording via Apple Watch. Document 003, the voluntary severance offer implies constructive dismissal. Document 004, comparison of current acquisition diligence vs. 2021 standards, note, 40% reduction in risk assessment steps. I wasn't building a defense, I was building a weapon. On Thursday, Chad stopped by my office. He actually leaned on the doorframe, chewing gum. "Hey, J-Team," he said. He had started calling me J-Team. "I hate him. Did you get that doc from HR? Pretty sweet deal, right? The CEO really wants to take care of you. We want you to enjoy some downtime. Maybe travel, eat, pray, love style. It's very generous, Chad," I said, looking up from my screen. "I'm reviewing the fine print. You know me, I like to be thorough. Don't overthink it," he laughed. "Paralysis by analysis, right? That's the old way. Just sign it, take the check, and hit the beach. I'll have an answer for you soon," I promised. He slapped the doorframe, a taggerl. He walked away, whistling. He thought he had won. He thought he was clearing the deck for his big victory lap. He had no idea that he had just admitted to my face that he was trying to bypass the governance protocols. I turned back to my screen. I opened my private email. I had a draft saved. It wasn't to HR. It wasn't to the CEO. It was to the personal, encrypted Proton mail account of the General Counsel for the Sovereign Wealth Fund that held 40% of our equity. I didn't send it yet. Premature execution is sloppy. You have to wait until the enemy is fully committed to the mistake. I closed my laptop. The silence in my office was heavy, but it wasn't lonely. It was the silence of a hunter in a blind, waiting for the buck to step into the clearing. New York runs on dinners, not the food. Nobody actually eats the food, but the proximity, the acoustics, the ability to look someone in the eye and gauge if they're lying about the EBITDA. I was at Le Bernardin on a Tuesday night, not for work officially. I was there for the birthday of an old friend, but as fate or careful seating chart manipulation would have it, I spotted Robert 3 tables away. Robert was a senior partner at Highland Capital. We've worked together for 8 years. He's the kind of guy who wears loafers without socks and can smell fear in a spreadsheet. I saw him spot me. He waved, I nodded, I knew he would come over. By the time the tuna tartare arrived, Robert was standing at my table. Joanne, he said, kissing me on both cheeks, I haven't seen a report from you in weeks. I assumed you were on vacation. I wiped my mouth with the linen napkin. I paused. A deliberate 3-second pause. Vacation, I asked, arching an eyebrow. Is that what they told you? Robert's smile faltered, just a fraction. Well, the monthly governance summary came from, what's his name? The new guy, Chad. It was a bit light. He said you were focusing on high-level strategy and delegated the reporting. I let out a soft, confused chuckle. That's interesting phrasing. I haven't seen the monthly summary, Robert. I've been removed from the distribution list. The air between us changed. The ambient noise of the restaurant seemed to drop away. Robert leaned in closer, his hand gripping the back of the empty chair next to me. Removed, he repeated. Joanne, you're the designated liaison. We have a clause, you know we have a clause. I know we have a clause, Robert, I said, taking a sip of sparkling water. I'm not sure the current board has read it, or if they have, they consider it legacy thinking. Robert's eyes narrowed. He looked like a wolf catching a scent. You telling me you aren't overseeing the diligence on the tech core acquisition? I'm telling you that my access to the data room was revoked 3 weeks ago, and my budget for external audit was reallocated to marketing. I shrugged as if it were a minor annoyance. But I'm sure Chad has it under control. He talks a lot about velocity. Apparently, I'm too rigid. Robert wasn't smiling anymore. He looked furious, but not at me. Velocity, he spat the word out. We don't pay for velocity, Joanne. We pay for stability. If you aren't looking at those books, he let the sentence hang. I can't confirm or deny what I can't see, Robert, I said, offering him an out. Maybe everything is fine. Maybe the numbers are perfect. But if I were you, I'd wonder why they don't want me checking them. He straightened up. He buttoned his jacket. I need to make a call, he said. Enjoy your dinner, Robert. Try the scallops. He walked back to his table, but he didn't sit down. He walked straight past his dinner companions and out to the coat check, his phone already pressed to his ear. I watched him go. I took a bite of my tuna. It was delicious. 2 days later, my phone rang. It wasn't an internal extension. It was Robert's number. Joanne, he said, no pleasantries. I asked for the raw diligence files. Chad sent me a summary deck. He said the raw files are proprietary internal work product. Since when do we not get the raw files? Since never, I said calmly. I asked him if you had signed off on the risk assessment. He said, and I quote, Joanne is transitioning to a new role, so we've handled this at the executive level. I see, I said. Are you? Robert asked. Transitioning? I have a severance package on my desk that they'd very much like me to sign by Friday, I admitted. It characterizes my departure as voluntary. Silence on the line. Heavy, expensive silence. Do not sign it, Robert commanded. I wasn't planning to. Joanne, if you are removed without our vote, that's a breach of the 2019 LP agreement. Section 4.2. I know, Robert. I wrote Section 4.2. I'm going to send a formal inquiry to the board, he said. I'm going to rattle some cages. No, I said quickly. Not yet. Why? Because if you rattle the cage now, they'll scramble. They'll fake the logs. They'll backdate the approvals. They'll claim it was a misunderstanding and restore my access just long enough to hide the mess. So what do? Wait for the quarterly call, I said. Let them go on record. Let Chad present the numbers to the entire investor pool. Let him claim on a recorded line that governance is sound. That's risky, Joanne. It's not risky if you know the truth, I said. Let him put his neck in the noose, Robert. Then you can kick the chair. He laughed, a dry, sharp sound. Remind me never to piss you off, Joanne. Too late for some, I said. We hung up. The trap was primed. Now, I just needed to make sure I had the ammunition ready for when the trigger was pulled. The office at 9 p.m. is a different beast. The air conditioning hums a lower frequency. The motion sensor lights click off in the hallways, leaving islands of illumination. It's usually my favorite time to work. Tonight, however, I wasn't the only one there. I was in my office, lights off, the glow of my monitor the only thing illuminating my face. I was finishing the clarification package for Robert's legal team, but down the hall in the executive wing, I heard a sound that warms the heart of any forensic auditor. Whirr, chunk, the industrial shredder. I stood up and walked silently in my stocking feet to the edge of the hallway. The glass walls of the director's office were frosted, but the door was ajar. A single lamp was on. I saw Chad. His tie was loosened, his hair, usually lacquered into submission, was falling over his forehead. He looked frantic. He was pulling staples out of thick documents and feeding them into the machine. He wasn't shredding junk mail. He was shredding the red-line drafts of the acquisition agreement, the ones with the handwritten notes, the ones that probably said things like ignore this liability or hide this debt. I didn't stop him. I didn't pull out my phone to film him. That would be amateur hour. Instead, I walked back to my desk. I knew something Chad didn't know. Our multifunction printers/copiers have a hard drive. Every document scanned or copied in the last 30 days is stored in a temporary cache for retrieval. And Chad, being the lazy disruptor he was, had undoubtedly copied those documents for his core growth team before realizing he needed to destroy the originals. I sat down and logged into the admin panel for the executive printer. I still had the password because 2 years ago, the IT guy was on vacation and I needed to scan a contract, so he gave me the master key and never changed it. Legacy access. I found the logs. User C. Preston job. Act draft V3 internal only time. 09:42 a.m. There it was. I downloaded the PDF directly from the printer's memory. I opened it. It was beautiful. On page 45, next to a clause about a pending lawsuit against the target company, a lawsuit that could bankrupt them, there was a handwritten note in blue ink, Chad's handwriting. Don't disclose to INV, yet deal killer. We fix post-close. Fraud. Pure, unadulterated, premeditated fraud. He was in his office right now, shredding the paper that contained that note, thinking he was erasing the evidence. He didn't realize he was just destroying the souvenir. I had the digital negative. I felt a strange sense of calm. This wasn't just incompetence anymore. This was criminal. And because I was the governance liaison, if I didn't report this, I was complicit. But I had to report it to the right people. If I went to the CEO, he'd bury it to save his own skin. I went back to my email draft to Robert's lawyer. I attached the PDF. I typed a simple message to General Counsel, Highland Capital from Joanne last name Ree. Supplemental clarification regarding due diligence attached. Please find the unredacted draft of the acquisition agreement retrieved from internal logs. Please note the handwritten annotation on page 45 regarding undisclosed litigation. I am currently witnessing the physical destruction of the original hard copy by the director. I am preserving this digital copy pursuant to my fiduciary duty under the 2019 LP agreement. Do not act until the call. Regards, Joanne. I hit send. The progress bar moved across the screen. Sent. Down the hall, the shredder stopped. I heard Chad sigh, a heavy, exhausted exhale. He probably felt safe now. He probably thought he had scrubbed the stain out of the carpet. I put my shoes back on. I grabbed my coat. I walked past his office on my way to the elevators. He jumped when he saw me. He was sweating. Joanne, he yelped. Jesus, you're still here? Late night? Just wrapping up some loose ends, I said, buttoning my coat. You know how it is. Cleaning house. He laughed nervously, glancing at the shredder bin which was now full of confetti. Yeah, exactly. Spring cleaning in October. Gotta stay lean. Good night, Chad, I said. Night, Joanne. Hey, did you sign that HR paperwork yet? I pressed the elevator button. The doors opened. I stepped in and held the door for a moment, looking at him. I'm bringing it to the meeting on Wednesday, I lied. Great, perfect. See you then. The doors closed. I checked my pulse. 72 beats per minute. Steady. Had the smoking gun. Now I just needed him to stand in front of the firing squad. Wednesday morning. The day of the quarterly investor call. The office was vibrating. You could feel the caffeine in the air. Junior analysts were sprinting between cubicles with updated slide decks. The printer was jamming every 10 minutes. In the main conference room, the war room, the executive team was huddled. Chad, the CEO, the CFO, and the inner circle. I was sitting at my desk, organizing my desktop icons. I wasn't invited to the war room. Around 10 o'clock a.m., I saw Kevin from IT running toward the conference room with a panicked look on his face. A moment later, the CFO's assistant came out, looking pale. The first domino had fallen. I checked my private email. A copy of the letter from Highland Capital's legal team had just arrived in my inbox, blind copied. Board of Directors from Highland Capital legal subject. Urgent. Pause on capital disbursements effective immediately. Highland Capital is freezing all pending tranches of funding for the Series E round and the acquisition facility. We require an immediate internal review of governance compliance regarding the tech core diligence process. We expect a full update during today's call. It was vague enough to cause panic, but specific enough to terrify them. They didn't know what Highland knew. They just knew the money tap had been turned off. Through the glass walls of the conference room, I saw the mood shift. The CEO was shouting at the speakerphone. Chad was waving his arms, pointing at the CFO. They were scrambling. They were trying to figure out where the leak was. I saw Chad look out the window, scanning the floor. His eyes landed on me. I was watering the piece lily on my desk. He stormed out of the conference room and marched toward my office. He didn't knock. He threw the door open. Did you talk to Highland? He demanded. His face was blotchy. Good morning, Chad, I said, putting down my watering can. Talk to them? About what? About the funding. They just froze the wire transfer. They're citing governance issues. That's odd, I said. I thought we pivoted away from governance. Didn't we decide it was a legacy bottleneck? He slammed his hand on my desk. Don't play games with me, Joanne. Did you call Robert? I haven't spoken to Robert in a professional capacity in weeks, I said, which was technically true. Our dinner was social. I don't have access to the diligence files, remember? How could I flag an issue if I can't see the data? He stared at me, searching for a crack. But I've sat across from federal regulators. I've sat across from hostile auditors. Chad was a golden retriever compared to them. We need you on the call, he said suddenly. I thought I was transitioning. Forget the transition. We need a united front. You need to be on the call to tell them that our oversight is robust. He wanted a human shield. He wanted me to go on record and lie for him, so if it blew up later, he could blame the legacy liaison. I can join the call, I said slowly. But I won't lie, Chad. I'll answer questions truthfully. He narrowed his eyes. Just stick to the script. We'll handle the Q&A. You just sit there and look like you're part of the team. If they ask about governance, you say we are fully aligned. Fully aligned, I repeated. Good. Be in the boardroom at 1:55. He ran back to the war room. I sat back down. I opened my purse and checked that my phone was fully charged. I opened the voice recorder app. Then I opened the folder on my computer labeled Final Archive. Dragged 3 files into an email draft. 1. The 2019 Trustee protocols. 2. The chat logs of my access denial. 3. The PDF of the fraudulent handwritten note. I entered the email addresses of the entire investor committee. 12 high net worth individuals and fund managers. I didn't hit send, not yet. I walked to the break room and made a cup of tea, Earl Grey. I wanted to be fully caffeinated for the performance. The meeting that never happened. The strategy session where they planned to sideline me was about to become the meeting where they wished they had never met me. I checked my reflection in the break room mirror. Suit crisp, hair perfect, expression neutral. It was showtime. The boardroom smelled like stale coffee and fear. At 2:00 p.m. we were live. The massive spider phone in the center of the table glowed green. On the screen, the participant list scrolled. Highland Capital, BlackRock, Teachers Pension Fund, Sovereign Wealth, billions of dollars of listening ears. Chad sat at the head of the table. The CEO was to his right. I was seated at the far end near the door. The United Front. Chad started his pitch. He was good, I'll give him that. He spun a tale of explosive growth, of synergy, of a new era of agility. He used the word optimization 11 times in 4 minutes. And regarding the acquisition, Chad said, his voice smooth, "We have completed a rigorous diligence process. We found 0 red flags. We are ready to close and integrate within 30 days. He looked at me when he said it. A warning glare. The line was silent. Usually there's a polite murmur. Today, nothing. Then Robert's voice came through the speaker. Clear. Sharp. Chad, this is Robert from Highland. Quick question. We received a notification about a pending lawsuit against the target company. Something about patent infringement that could wipe out their IP. Did your diligence team catch that? The air left the room. The CEO looked at Chad. Chad froze. Robert, Chad stammered. We looked into all litigation. We deemed everything to be non-material. Nuisance suits, standard stuff, non-material, Robert asked. So you have a record of it? Chad muted the mic. The light turned red. Joanne, he hissed down the table. Do we have a record of it? I don't know. Chad, I said calmly. I don't have access to the files. Make something up? He whispered furiously. Nod, do something? He unmuted the mic. Yes, Robert, Chad said, regaining his confidence. Our governance liaison, Joanne, has reviewed it personally and signed off. It's a non-issue. He pointed at me. Smile, his eyes said. Nod. I didn't smile. I didn't nod. I leaned forward toward the microphone. Actually, Robert, I said clearly. Chad's hand slammed down on the mute button. Beep. The light went red again. Shut up, Chad snarled at me. You are done, get out. You wanted me on the call, I said. I wanted a team player, not a saboteur. He laughed, a manic, high-pitched sound. God, you legacy people. It's not us, it's you. You're done here. Get out of my boardroom. He pointed to the door. I stood up. I picked up my notebook. I looked at the CEO. He looked away. I walked to the door. But as I reached for the handle, I heard a sound that made my blood sing. Excuse me? It was Robert's voice from the speaker. Chad looked down. The light on the phone was green. He hadn't hit the mute button hard enough, or maybe, in his panic, he double-tapped it. Excuse me, Robert repeated, his voice icy. Did the director just fire the fund's trustee liaison, live on an investor call? The silence in the room was absolute. It was the silence of a heart stopping. Chad stared at the green light. His face went gray. Robert, we were having an internal sidebar. Robert cut him off. You just admitted that Joanne reviewed the litigation. Then you told her to shut up when she tried to speak. And then you fired her. She's been obstructing the process. Chad yelled, losing it. She's not a team player. Chad, another voice piped up. It was the representative from the Teachers Pension Fund. Is Joanne still in the room? Chad looked at me. I was standing by the door, hand on the knob. I walked back to the table. I didn't sit. I stood directly over the speakerphone. I'm here, I said. Joanne, Robert said. Did you review the litigation and sign off on it as non-material? I looked at Chad. He was pleading with his eyes, begging. No, I said. I did not review it. My access to the diligence room was revoked on September 12th. My audit budget was zeroed out on September 15th. And as of this morning, I have witnessed the director shredding documents related to that litigation. Using my phone, I hit send on the email draft to the committee. I have just emailed the full documentation to the entire board and investor committee, I added, including the logs of the destroyed files. The chaos that erupted from the speakerphone was indescribable. 3 different lawyers started shouting at once. The CEO put his head in his hands. Chad just sat there, his mouth open, looking at the Polycom phone as if it were a bomb that had just detonated in his lap, which essentially it was. The call didn't end, it disintegrated. The lead investor, Robert, took command. This call is terminated. All funding is suspended pending a forensic audit. Board members, stay on the line. Executive management, disconnect immediately. The click of the line going dead was the loudest sound I've ever heard. for 10 seconds. Nobody moved in the boardroom. Then the CEO stood up. He walked over to Chad. He didn't scream. He spoke in a whisper that was terrifyingly audible. "You shredding documents, is that true?" Chad stammered. It was draft notes. Internal thoughts, it wasn't official. "You lied to the Capitol," the CEO said. "You lied to me. I was protecting the deal." Chad yelled, standing up. "I was doing what needed to be done to get the velocity up. Joanne is the problem. She leaked it." The CEO turned to me. "Joanne?" I stood calmly. "I adhered to Section 4.2 of the LP agreement, specifically the whistleblower protection clause regarding fiduciary breach. Would you like a copy? I have it here." I tapped the manila folder on the table. "Get out," the CEO said, but he wasn't looking at me. He was looking at Chad. I left the room. Back at my desk, the fallout was instantaneous. My inbox exploded, not with spam, but with automated alerts from the bank. Alert, dispersal account frozen. Alert, payroll account pending review. Alert, M and a escrow locked. The email I had sent, the one with the insurance policy documents, had triggered the nuclear option. The investors hadn't just paused the deal. They had invoked their right to seize operational control of the accounts. News hit the wires within the hour. Bloomberg Terminal, fund name halts funding for tech core deal amid governance probe. I saw the stock price ticker on the lobby TV take a nosedive. Chad's velocity had finally arrived. He had successfully driven the company off a cliff at record speed. Around 4 p.m., security came up. Usually, this is the part where they escort the whistleblower out. They walked past my office. They went to the corner office. I watched through the glass as Chad threw things into a box. His Montblanc pen, his framed degree. He was arguing with the guard, but the guard, a guy named Mike who I always made sure got a holiday bonus, wasn't having it. Mike took Chad's badge. Chad walked out. He looked at me as he passed. There was no arrogance left, just shock. He looked like a child who had touched the stove after being told it was hot. I didn't smile. I didn't wave. I just went back to typing. The CEO came by my office 10 minutes later. He looked 10 years older. "Joanne," he said, leaning on the doorframe. "Highland just called. They're demanding an interim governance audit." "That sounds prudent," I said. "They said they won't release payroll until the audit is started. We have 300 employees, Joanne. If they don't get paid, then you should probably start the audit," I said. "They want you to run it." I stopped typing. I swiveled my chair to face him. "I'm afraid I can't do that," I said. "I'm currently reviewing a voluntary transition package. According to HR, I'm legacy talent." He winced. "We can tear that up. We can discuss a retention bonus." "I don't want a bonus, David," I said. "What do you want?" "I want the 2019 protocols reinstated. I want a formal apology read into the minutes of the next board meeting. And I want my budget restored. The 20% increase for inflation and stress." He stared at me. He knew he had no choice. The Capitol had spoken, and the Capitol trusted only one person in this building. "Fine," he said. "Done. One more thing," I said. "What?" "I want that glass wall in the boardroom unfrosted. I like to see what's going on." He nodded. He walked away. I looked at my computer. The freeze alerts were still active, but I had the key to melt the ice. It's been a week since the call. The office is quieter now. The Growth Vectors team has been disbanded. The marketing billboards were canceled. The espresso machine is still broken, but at least the payroll went through. Chad is gone. Rumor has it he's trying to spin this as a strategic divergence on his LinkedIn, but word travels fast in this town. You can fail at a startup and be a hero, but you can't lie to a pension fund and survive. That's a permanent mark. Board tried to suggest a replacement for the director role. A seasoned veteran from a competitor. Robert sent a one-line email in response. "We will work through our existing liaison. No additional layers required." So I'm not just the governance liaison anymore. I am the de facto gatekeeper. Nothing moves, not a wire transfer, not a press release, not a hire, without my initial on the digital routing slip. I walked into the boardroom this morning for the weekly update. The glass was clear. The view of the Hudson was gray and steel hard, just the way I like it. There was a chair at the head of the table. It was empty. The CEO sat to the side. The CFO nodded at me respectfully. The general counsel gave me a nervous smile. "Joanne," the CEO said, "shall we begin?" I sat down. Not at the head, that's for people who need to feel important. I sat in my usual spot near the door where I can see everything. "Let's look at the foundation," I said. I opened my laptop. The 2019 protocols were up on the screen. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. I disagree. Revenge is unprofessional. This wasn't revenge. This was a correction, a market adjustment. Chad thought power was noise. He thought it was velocity and buzzwords and disruption. He didn't understand that in the world of high finance, the most powerful person in the room isn't the one shouting. It's the one holding the kill switch. I took a sip of my tea, Earl Grey, hot. "Page 1, I said, and for the first time in months, everyone in the room started taking notes. Thanks for listening. If you've ever had a boss who thought synergy was a substitute for competence, you know exactly how that tea tasted. Stay sharp, check your contracts, and never, ever let them mute you.